Yeehaw! And no, your eyes are not deceiving you. There's not one, but there's two Hopalong Cassidy, Arvin Hopalong Cassidy radios on my workbench. And before I forget the names, I'm old enough to when they had cowboy shows on television still, but I don't think I remember Hopalong Cassidy. The name sounded familiar, so I looked him up, and he was played. The character goes all the way back to the turn of the century. But then from the 30s to the 50s, there was a guy named William Boyd who played Hopalong Cassidy in over 66 films, and then had a children's themed, I think, television show. And so I'm going to assume that this is basically a piece of merchandise for Hopalong Cassidy and his show. And it says it's an Arvin model 441T. This one is obviously the original paint, because you can see the stickers peeling off underneath, and there's no weird looking discoloration. I'm going to move this away from that. And we have a black one. Again, I think this is probably the original finish. Most of the label's missing. It's a little bit rougher. On the back we have the impression of a saddle. I guess you could use maybe this for running your antenna out. I don't know. Yeah, maybe. There you go. There's the antenna. Don't know if either one of them works. This one has an awfully nice looking power cord though, and it's got a replacement plug. So I'm going to bring it up slowly. Ordinarily on a AA5 I'd go for broke and just turn it on, and probably not much is going to happen. But with one of these, just in case something could happen, I'd rather it not, because these are more expensive than what I'm used to. So let me get my Variac turned on, and we'll monitor it slowly.
105 degrees so far. No fatalities have been reported.
You can grant relief as to them if
I don't hear any hum. It's pulling about what I would think. It's not quite up to 110, drawing about 20 watts. I'm thinking these are probably 4-tube radios.
in this case, that is, we need to know.
Anyway, it's a minimum. It's got dirty pots. I need to take the chassis out because I need to buff up the cabinet anyway. I want to get that out, and I need to be careful because I guarantee it's very thin stamped aluminum, so I'm going to have to be very careful handling this. Well, kind of figured. It is a 4-tube radio of the most rudimentary design. It's like almost like a kit radio. I mean, this thing was made for kids. It's like probably really cheap, probably like 10 or 15 bucks. They could put it on their bedside and listen to the ball game or Hopalong Cassidy. And it appears that it was worked on at some point in the past. That's not factory. It just kind of wobbling around on there with that electrical tape. I've seen worse. And I would assume this has to be a floating ground set. There's no way they would make this a hot chassis with a metal case like that. Even back then, you can only get away with so much. Anyway, where does this ground go? Because where that ground goes will probably be a good indicator. And, well, I'll find it eventually when I start replacing these, but one of these is going to be a 2 chassis capacitor, and that will eliminate the possibility of you getting all the voltage, well, all the amperage that could get squeezed out of that outlet through you. But even back then, they didn't quite understand how little it takes to cause someone's heart to fibrillate a little bit. So we're going to lower that even further. We're going to take that down to a capacitor rated at 0.01 rated microfarads. And it's also going to be a across the line rated capacitor. And I'll explain that in a little bit, but the first thing first is I need to replace the electrolytic capacitors. I'm pretty certain these are probably just 250 microfarad capacitors. I mean, that's what I'm going to replace them with anyway. Yeah, 40 and 20. I don't have any 20 microfarad capacitors, and that's perfectly okay. The working voltage DC is 150. It won't see anything close to that. It's probably going to see more like 120. because again, this has no transformer. It's running off of your wall outlet directly. I'm going to cut this out, and then the red and green wires, that's your color code, which is written on the side here about which one is which. And your black almost always is going to be your common ground for both of these, because there's two values inside of this can. You can remove this entirely, and then we're going to start replacing these capacitors that are not electrolytic. They are paper capacitors. Their capacitance, for example, here would be read as 0.05 rated microfarads at 400 volts working voltage. And again, this is rated at much higher than it'll ever see. They did, even back then, they knew that there's going to be a surge when you turn these things on. I replaced them all with the same value, thereabouts, and voltage 630 volts. It'll handle everything. You also want to check, ooh, look at that. That just like broke. So, grand. Off to a great start. I'm going to go ahead and replace that one before I miss that spot. Well, I just realized I just went ahead and restored this thing without videoing any of it. And my lame excuse is that for the past 2 months, I've been kind of in overdrive mode restoring radios for our upcoming auction. We needed to have 50. And so I didn't really have time to film. And we had a lot of other people helping too. I mean, 50 radios is quite a few to restore in a short amount of time. And luckily we have some really great technicians and volunteers. Don't worry, it's not plugged in. I just want to straighten that up a little bit. But what I did is I replaced the electrolytics, and I mounted this terminal strip here. And that gave me a tie point, and then the two positives, which are the non-stripy side of the capacitor. So for example here, when I'm talking about stripes, we'll either have like an arrow or usually a white stripe. That always indicates that that's the negative side of the capacitor. And with these electrolytics, it's key that you put them in the right way. So observe the polarity, because if you put them in backwards, they will blow up. And this old one has indicators showing what is what. Again, here we have red and green terminals, red and green terminals, and that equals 40 microfarads and 20 microfarads, 150 volts. And I've replaced it with two 47 microfarad capacitors at 160 volts. Some people think you need to go 220 volts. I've never had a problem using 160 volts. Anyway, what I also want to do is clean up the volume pot a little bit because it's a little scratchy, so I'm using this electrical contact cleaner. You don't need much. Just worked it in a little bit. Maybe flush it just a little bit more. There we go. So now it's time to see if it still works. So the other thing I did, which is key, is luckily it is a floating chassis, meaning it's not directly a hot chassis. But what it did have, it had this capacitor going to ground, 0.05 microfarads. So even back then they knew this was a stupid idea. We should not have one side of the AC line going to that metal chassis, especially inside of a metal cabinet, especially when it's children involved, because you'd probably get a lot of really angry parents. Anyhow, let's fire it up and see what it does. I do have the antenna connected to my household antenna, which goes up on my roof, so I'll probably pick up something. I just didn't feel like unfurling that antenna. Could be a little bit of a slow warmer upper.
Or claim number ready. With money new.
Still seems like got a little bit of debris in the pot there. Either that or something is not, something's a little bit loose. Let's see if it's something I did.
Another.
Okay. I'm going to unplug it, and I'm going to retouch up my solder connections because there's not many. I think I've got a cold socket somewhere, or a cold joint somewhere.
That does not work.
All right, bottom line, I got it to work. Like I said, it's a 4-tube wonder, so I had to run the antenna all the way out.
There, and then they eventually, we were up the left field deck, way up. And eventually they called the game and they said the tickets would be honored.
There was never.
That has always.
Catholic curriculum for grades K.
Not bad. Anyway, I had to run the antenna all the way out to here. So I guess hopefully the instructions for the little kiddo said, hey kids, make sure and run your antenna like out your window and then probably attach it to about 50 feet of other wire, otherwise you won't hear the show. I'm kind of wondering how many angry parents or kids would call in and say, hey, I can't pick up Hopalong Cassidy. It's like, what do you expect, kid? Anyway, I think the electronics are in good shape, so now I'm going to start on the cabinet, and I'm going to have to be careful with this thing, because that's some sort of foil. If I mess that up, like, that's all the value, because otherwise, they made a bunch of these stamped steel radios, and these days are $50 radios, but this one's probably more like $150 or something. I don't know. These don't do anything for me, but then again, I wasn't alive when this was around, so maybe some of you other guys are like, what are you saying? You better not talk mean about Hopalong Cassidy and whatever he did, but at least the radio's going to work. All right, what I'm going to do is use a soft foam applicator on a drill, and I'm not going to touch that foil, but I'm going to go over the paint. I'm just going to go over the top surface. I'm not going to get anywhere near that front. And I'm using this Carnauba car wax, real gentle. All right, well, still got scratches and stuff in it, but the fact that that's the original finish, I'd way rather have an original finish that has little nicks and scratches and stuff than have something that's been repainted. The same goes for the back here. You know, there's like some little scratches and stuff, but I was able to clean that up. And I didn't touch that, like I said, but I did clean up the knobs. So, I think I'll put this back in and it'll be done. All right, it's restored.
Para los juegos en beachboardwalk.com y ahora.
Hopefully it takes something away. Listening to Marriage Unhindered. And then they found wisdom.
ERA, and Denny McClain won 31 games, and the pitching was so dominant, they had to lower the mound.
I don't think this has any automatic frequency control at all.
You get your podcasts.
Reborn your Friday afternoon news watch with a popular display in San Francisco returning in what creators call the world's largest pride flag. The stunning rainbow lasers will light up San Francisco's Market Street tonight at sunset. As KCBS reporter Holly.
By the way, that's awesome looking. You can see that across the entire sky here. I don't live in San Francisco, but sometimes you can see it from here in the East Bay.
Dumping DEI initiative.
Well, it picks up all the regular AM radio stations. Anyway, someone was telling me something about this. One of my friends told me that this is an earlier version and that the horse rearing up they thought was too frightening for children. I'm not sure why. It doesn't look very threatening. He's like, the horse is like, we're ready to go get crime. I mean, put people behind bars for breaking the law. But anyway, the later ones had all four hooves down, so it's just like Hopalong Cassidy sitting there. But anyway, that concludes this episode of Radio Rama. I'm not going to film the other one because I'm sure you guys would rather have other things to do besides watching me store another fabulous 4-tube radio. I'll let this guy run for a while because that's a very small little cabinet. Anyway, that's the end of this episode. Thank you much for watching. I know it's a short one. See you guys later. Bye.